is the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network, your number one source of information, education, and entertainment. For honest, responsible, and dependable information, we stand supreme. To stay focused, inspired, and relaxed, choose green.
Herbal, and welcome to the traditional Herbal Health Show. I am your host, Ifebemero Adifoncho Rishabemi. I would open today's show by reading the IBA for today. Ope ni fun olorun Oludumare Oba Ajiki Mojiloni Monwogumeriaye Iba Ila Orun Iba Iwo Orun Iba Ariwa Iba Gosu Iba Oba Igbalye Iba Orun Oke Iba Baba Iba Yeye Iba Atiwo Orun Ibashe Igungun Kiki Igungun Ibashe Ori Ori Inu or Ipori Atiwo Orun. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. All right. So for today's show, I'm going to do a reading. I had a choice between two pieces of information, and I chose to go with this book. The title for this book is A Country Doctor's Common Sense Health Manual by J. Frank Herbal. All right. And this person was a medical doctor who recommended some household common sense remedies for various types of problem. All right. Now, I chose today one of the formulas that I think would be helpful and one that addresses a common problem that is suffered by many. All right. The article or the chapter that I'm going to look at deals with your heart and your blood vessels. All right. So I'm going to do some reading. That in this book, it is chapter 3. All right. And this chapter deals with how to build new strength into your heart and blood vessels. All right. Now, folks, again, on the show, our intention is to provide information. If you have any major health problems, we recommend you visit a medical doctor. Outside of this, the program is to provide for us basic information on traditional herbal health, which would include our discussion of things like herbs and the way they are used in the region. All right. So remember, my advice is if you are terribly ill, seek out the guidance of a healthcare professional. If you have a situation and you decide you wish to take alternative healthcare, we would advise you to go to qualified individuals, persons who have received some sort of formal training, whether it is traditional herbs, modern herbs, contemporary herbs, a combination of East and West herbs, whatever Whoever you visit, make sure they are properly qualified in the field. All right? Now I'm going to read. This chapter concerns heart disease, its prevention and treatment. So, folks, if you have a heart disease or you have a friend who have a heart disease, tell your friend to log on and try to follow up this show because they're going to get some home remedies and various modes where they can help themselves. All right? There is much confusion and myth regarding heart attacks. I'd like to clear the air on this subject and show you how to tell if you have heart disease and how it's dealt with once it occurs. Nature has a built-in warning device for protecting the heart. You'll see how this early warning system works and learn how to use it. Your blood vessels are a prime target for disease of the wearing down type. You'll discover how to prevent this from happening to your vessels. Some of you will have already had such troubles. You will be shown how to reestablish dynamic health after such troubles start. Blood clots and strokes can strike unreasonable fear into the heart of most people. Both can be prevented and both can be treated satisfactorily in most cases at home. And it is set out in this particular chapter of the book. Again, the name of the book is A Country Doctor's Common Sense Heart Manual, and it's written by J. Frank Herbal, MD. All right. Heading off heart disease. You're fortunate if you're already begun the basic process of preventing heart and blood vessel disease by doing physical toning routines at least twice every day. So the very, very first suggestion here, my friends, is exercising at least twice daily. This practice increases the tone of your heart muscles as well as stimulating your body to grow new blood vessels. To carry vital oxygen and energy to your heart muscles, which beats between 7 to 80 times every minute, 24 hours a day. It is these new blood vessels that form as a direct result of your exercising that will spell the difference between having or not having a coronary heart attack and recovering or not recovering if you should have one. The following conditions are known to increase your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. If you're overweight, this increases your chances of heart and blood vessel disease. If you are smoking, this increases your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. If you suffer from high blood pressure, this increases your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. If you are short and stocky built, this increases your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. If your job is a high pressure job, This increases your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. If you have high blood fat, including cholesterol, this increases your chances for heart and blood vessel disease. So if you fall into any of the 6 categories that I just read, you are at risk. So you need to pay close attention to what I am going to read today. Now, it says you can rate yourself as follows. Give yourself 1 point for each of the above items if you know that it doesn't apply to you. Give yourself 2 points if it applies a little, and 3 if any of the items applies a lot. Meaning, if you find yourself being overweight, smoking, having high blood pressure, and you're stocky build, plus you're working a high pressure job and you have cholesterol, you are a perfect candidate for these diseases. All right. So if you fall into those categories, pay attention. All right. Now he's going to get into the dynamics of each one. Being overweight. You're now beginning to see why I devote an entire chapter to physical toning and the ideal weight control. If there has been any doubt in your mind in understanding the essence of this, all right, I suggest you read this again. But 40% of all heart and blood vessel diseases would disappear in the United States and elsewhere if the single factor of being overweight were eliminated. All right, of course, consult again the height weight frame table, blah, 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 blah. Consult the reading diet list where it is given. Get with weight control and physical toning if you value your healthful life. Folks, it is very important for us to engage in physical exercise, particularly if you live a sedentary lifestyle. By that, I mean if you are not an active person. Get out, get exercise, breathe fresh air, taking a little sunlight. All very important and all related to exercise. Okay, the second thing we're going to look at is smoking. If you smoke more than 2 packs of cigarette a day, you're a heavy smoker. If between 1 and 2 packs, a moderate smoker. If less than a pack daily, a light smoker. Much has been said about smoking and disease, and much more has been written. The truth is, with smoking, it's the amount you smoke. A half pack or less a day, you don't have to give up, just cut down. Well, I don't agree with that, but that's the author's opinion. Cigars and pipes appear to be harmless insofar as heart and blood vessel diseases are concerned, but I'll have more to say about them later. My friends, I don't recommend smoking at all. This is my opinion, not the author's own. He says it's okay if you smoke a little bit, that you could cut down, and reduce. I say if you really are a chronic smoker, if you really smoke a couple of packs a day, I say in that case, before you quit, you would have to reduce. But outside of that, if you're a light smoker, you could probably just quit, right? Smoking is no good. Blood pressure can be tricky. All right, so now I'm moving on from smoking to blood pressure. Although it's not impossible to record your own blood pressure, it's best to let someone else do it who has had experience using the blood pressure cuff. There are 2 readings with blood pressure, one written above the line and one written below the line. For example, 130/80 is referred to as 130 over 80. In this example, the 130 is your systolic reading, which is the pressure inside your arteries when your heart contracts. So the next time you hear the term systolic, know that it is in reference to the pressure inside your arteries when your heart contracts. Okay? The 80 is the diastolic reading, and that is the pressure inside your arteries when your heart relaxes. Okay, folks, so you have two readings. One is the systolic, which is the pressure inside your arteries when your heart contracts, and you have the diastolic reading, which is the pressure inside your arteries when your heart relaxes. All right, so now we know the two. The diastolic reading is the more important since it shows the pressure in your artery during its relaxed phase. The more rigid an artery when relaxed, the tighter its muscle coating. The tighter the muscle coating, the greater the chances of it causing trouble, coronaries, stroke, and clots. The first line of attack on blood pressure is weight control. So we go right back to being overweight. Yet another of many reasons for getting your weight close to ideal. For very few cases of high blood pressure among people of ideal weight need to be treated with medicine to bring it down. One blood pressure reading does not mean much. 4 or 5 readings taken at weekly intervals over 4 to 6 weeks are much more accurate for a blood pressure estimate. It's normal, for example, for your blood pressure to rise during any exertion, but it drops right back down again when you stop exerting. There is nothing harmful in this rise. Being tense and upset make blood pressure go up. When calm again, it should come right back down. All right, folks? So, beside stress, things such as cholesterol, bad diet, lack of exercise contributes also to high blood pressure when you have buildup of cholesterol and clogged arteries, hardened arteries, etc., etc. All right, let me go right back to the reading. Body build. People who are fairly short, stockily built, heavy muscled plus overweight, and who tend to get little exercise are peculiarly prone to heart and blood vessel diseases. I realize you can pick your inheritance, but you can lose weight and start toning routine. You can't change your basic bill, but you can be tougher in getting the other 5 high risk factors under control. All right, pressure on the job. This is another factor, folks. If you have a stressful job, it could affect your heart. Not enough attention, in my opinion, has been paid to this fact of being under constant and continual high stress on the job. I mean by this people who worry constantly about getting a job done or about what someone else is going to think about the way they do their work, coupled with having to constantly be concerned about deadlines in their job. It's been shown that such people are in jeopardy from heart and blood vessel disease. The only way I know to avoid these factors is to be transferred to another job where you don't feel the edge of pressure so much or where deadline day in and day out are not the business of the day. Folks, in other words, choose a career that you love and avoid stressful situations. All right. Now, the last thing we're going to look at in this section is blood fat. If you're overweight, you can be sure that your blood fat, cholesterol, and others are too high. You don't need to be tested to know this. Your weight must be brought under control. Even after weight control, there are some people who are still high in cholesterol and other fats. If this is the case, a low cholesterol diet is in order, plus perhaps one of the newer medicines that lower the level of blood fat. It doesn't take much time or trouble to drop into a laboratory or a hospital outpatient department on the way to work some morning to have this testing done. Yes, you can have your blood fat checked, or you could have cholesterol checked also. All right. Short of this, consult. Okay, they recommend chapters in the book. All right. Now, does alcohol hurt? In the case of heart and blood vessel disease, either extremes with alcohol can be harmful, right? Um, I'm going to skip through a couple of paragraphs here and skip to some of the important parts. Heart attack, is it the end? The human body ability to heal itself is nothing short of fantastic. True, the, the results aren't always perfect, but when you stop to consider all the things the body can do for itself, you can't help but marvel. Let's say you're like a man I know named James John R., age 54, married, and who has had his first coronary attack. I'd like to tell you what happened to John and I'd have been how I'd have done it differently had I been John, physician from the start. It wasn't until some time after his heart attack that John came to me. So what followed was already history when I met him. All right, you can recover just like John. John, it seems, was stricken with a coronary at work, with his coronary at work, taken to a hospital and immediately plunked into an intensive care unit, a relatively new part of a hospital concerned with the care of seriously and critically ill. Yes, the doctor told John he'd had a heart attack. All right, not a big one, but nevertheless a coronary occlusion that started, as most do, a sudden, severe, crushing sensation under the breastbone, difficulty getting in a breath of air, profuse sweating, and spreading out of the chest pain up to the left shoulder and down inside the upper arm. So, folks, what you just heard there is the symptoms and signs associated to a heart attack. I would read it again. So, anytime you're in the presence of someone and they describe to you that they're having these particular signs, symptoms, or feelings, you would have an idea what is going on. All right. It says a sudden, severe crushing sensation under the breastbone, difficulties getting in a breath of air, profuse sweating, and spreading of the chest pain up to the left shoulder and down the inside of the left upper arm. All right. Now, the current scientific rules and regulations say that such an individual must remain almost motionless and flat in bed for 3 weeks. This is where I'd first disagree with the popular notion. John was forced to remain immobilized in bed for 3 weeks after he got out of the intensive care section, even though on the fifth day, most of his pain and discomfort was gone, and he was becoming very fidgety, confined as he was to bed. Instead of sizing up what seemed to be the different situation in John's case, he was given strong sedatives to ensure that he stayed immobilized and in bed. In short, John was forced to remain in his mummified condition with the threat that if he didn't, he might kill himself with the slightest exertion. It was at this point that John became so scared of his heart and what might happen that he became a prisoner of his own fear, a psychological cripple, paralyzed by what might happen if he didn't toe the line. This is the author speaking here. Your post heart attack schedule. He says, my own view is that most heart attacks, such as this, needs to be treated with such strict immobility, but that barring complications, certain activities can be started on the third and fourth day. Naturally, no one thinks the patient ought to be doing calisthenics, but changing position and going to the bathroom on other than a bedpan, the most devilish invention of the 20th century, seems to be in order. The point is that when John arrived home during the fourth week after his attack, he was so worried about a catastrophe that he sat frozen in a chair. Though perfectly able to move about and do essential things for himself, and he sat and sat and sat. John's wife waited on him, hand and foot, even more concerned than John that the slightest exertion might bring on another and perhaps fatal calamity. In my view, John should have been moving freely about the house, going to the bathroom by himself, and doing a few extra things to help his wife at this time. As it was, after 6 weeks had passed, and John's heart healing process had long since completed itself, he was still an armchair invalid, and nothing anyone could say would get it out of his head that it was perfectly safe to start getting back into the swing of things again. He put on more weight, his muscles became soft and flabby from disuse, his mental attitude deteriorated with each passing day. He aged about 10 years in 6 weeks. Okay? How John responded to common sense health control. There are far too many problems like John's, maybe not as pronounced, but problems even so. In going over the risk table I listed earlier in chapter 1, I estimated John to score 13, a moderate severe risk for cardiac and blood vessel disease. In a little doing, John could easily have forced this count below 9, taking him out of the high risk category. But all that was past here. He was well on his way to becoming a permanent invalid. Songs like Health Under Good Control, definitely not. My first contact with John came with a visit to his house because his physician had become ill himself and asked me to look in on him. I couldn't believe what I found. And to make matters worse, John was beginning to have signs of phlebitis in the veins of one leg as a result of his sitting in a chair so long all day. And that's all John needed. Something else to complicate the picture. I began to explore the elements of health control with John. He was horrified at the idea of getting up, walking around the block, or starting physical toning routines. He'd never bothered with them before his heart attack. And the idea of doing something so drastic at this time was simply out of the question as far as John was concerned. I finally told him that if he didn't start it and start it soon, he'd never get out of the chair again. He said he'd wait to hear from his own doctor, and he did. Trouble is, He waited too long. He developed acute thrombosis in one leg, a clot broke off and traveled to his lungs, where trouble started that proved much worse than his original heart attack. All right? This is the schedule recommended. Well, you know the story. I guess John died. All right? Now, here is a schedule for heart attack patients. All right? The most heart attack patients can tolerate John should have been on it. One, the first week, sit in the chair in the hospital room, go to the bathroom. Not straining from constipation and plenty of fluid. Laxative beforehand will prevent this from being a problem. Deep breathing and leg exercises. The second week, he recommends out of bed for stroll. Visit friends in lobby. Leg exercises, weight reduction if needed. The third week, full ambulatory to physical therapy department of hospital for careful supervised leg, abdominal, and arm exercises. Week 4 at home, graduated and careful toning routine started, weight control started, mental conditioning started, appropriate diet continued and enforced. All right. Now, if you've had a heart attack, if you've had heart difficulties, remember these points. In any coronary attack, the die is cast in the first 24 hours. Either your heart has the capacity to recover or it does not. If the latter, nothing will prevent the inevitable. If the former, which is usually the case, then you have every reason to begin to think about and do those things that experience prove will reduce the risk of another heart attack and that will return you to a perfectly normal life again. Perhaps a much better life than you've had at any time in your past. Number two, nature has provided your heart with an early warning device. I'll discuss a little later. Rely on it, depend on it. Don't let yourself be done out of an active, useful, and healthy life. Three, when you arrive at home, start things off slowly at first. Don't leap back into your previous habit. Think about it. Find out what must be done to reduce your risk and aim to accomplish these things first. Ask questions of your doctor, and if you don't understand the answer, ask again until you do. All right. Angina pectoris. This is angina means heart pain. It usually occurs beneath your breastbone and is the case of a coronary attack, but it isn't nearly so overwhelming or uncomfortable. The pain may be to the left of your breastbone and may spread to your shoulder, neck, jaw, or arm on the left side. It occurs when you're overdone yourself physically. It is built-in early warning device I mentioned a bit ago. Pay attention to it. It signals you've reached your physical limit. It lets up when you rest. So a sign that you may have an impending heart attack is angina pectoris. All right? And this pain is on the left of your breastbone and may spread to your shoulder, neck, jaw, or arm. Okay, so this is a built-in warning sign. All right? So with that, I would stop reading for today. But I would also say this. Now, I'm going to give my opinion now. For persons who have serious health conditions, what you always attempt to do first is take care of your psychological health. Try always to stay in a healthy frame of mind. Be positive, be happy, And most importantly, try to stay away from depression and stress. Okay? You go around happy people, you engage in activities that you enjoy to make you happy. All right? You go outside, you take fresh air, you try to do some sort of exercise. All right? You try not to let people bog you down too much with too much negativity. You know, you try to avoid stress. You try to do exercise. All right. Now, in terms of one of the comments that I got, which is wow. Now, the information provided is not the most recent information. So, for persons who suffer from these conditions, it would be suggested that you always, one, speak with your doctor, and you also do as much research as you can on your health condition. All right. So, mentioned here was weight control being one of the main things that you should look at. Smoking, something that you should also definitely avoid or try to control if you are already a chronic smoker. Uh, Regulate your blood pressure, even if it means taking medication. In some cases, you avoid particular things like highly seasoned food, salt, and drinks that contain high levels of sodium. For persons who are short and stockily built, definitely that puts you definitely at risk. You should try to engage in physical activity and exercise. And for persons who work in stressful environments, you should by all means try to reduce your stress level. Maybe transfer to another department, you know. Also, your diets that contain high level of fatty substances. All right, so that basically is today's lesson. Um, what I would do now, which I normally do, is I would speak a little a bit about educational opportunities on the Green Network, the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network. We have classes, 3 classes like this one online during the course of the week. On a Sunday, of course, which is today, is the traditional herbal health show. On a Wednesday, we have the Ifa Bamero show, which is basic Ifa Orisha teachings. On a Friday, we have the Ifa Orisha Tradition Community Discussion Show. We have virtual classes. We have astrology classes each Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. And on a Friday at 5 o'clock, we have etymology classes. The African Indigenous Tradition Community have classes every Tuesday at 5 p.m. at the Barataria Community Center, which is in 6th Avenue, opposite the recreation ground. All are invited. All right. We do teach Ifa Orisha tradition, but we also plan on embarking on quite a range of different African traditional educational opportunities also. On social media, we provide um, several forums or groups where these streams, as well as the other streams, can be viewed, starting with, of course, the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network, the Ifa Orisha Tradition Discussion Group of TNT, the Ifa Bemero Home of Ifa Orisha Tradition, the Ifa Orisha Community Congress, the Ifa Orisha Institute of Sacred and Divine Science, the Ifa Orisha Tradition Teaching Group of TNT, the Traditional Herbal Health Network International, as well as on the Orisha Baptist Small and Medium Business Alliance. On the African Indigenous Tradition Community, as well as we are on the Orisha Baptist Teaching Moments International and on EANT's Diasporic Venture. Beside these, we are also on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of the Ifa Bemero Home of Ifa Orisha Tradition. All right, with that, I would like to encourage viewers to like, share, and subscribe. All right, with that, I would say Odabo and see you next week.